Hello， 大家好，欢迎回到外媒看中国，我是安博然。China has politely but sternly told the United States and the Trump administration to do better with their budgeting and finances after the US had its credit rating slashed amid concerns of its ever-growing debt, as well as uncertainties brought about by Trump's ludicrous Liberation Day tariff scam. And China is right to speak up, especially after having bailed the United States out last time the world economy was about to crash in 2008, following reckless policy in Washington, D.C. and blatant malpractice from the money-hungry bankers on Wall Street. China does not want to have to step in and rescue the US again. Today we'll go beyond the propaganda. This is Reports on China. I'm Andy Boreham here in Shanghai. Let's get reporting. First up today, you guys, some quick updates on my book, the Wu Mao Handbook Volume 1, 20 Anti-China Lies Debunked. Due to popular demand, I've just released a Kindle or ebook version for those of you who've been asking me to release one. It literally just went live today, and you can grab a copy for just $3.88. Thanks to everyone who's bought a copy so far. The Wu Mao Handbook entered a number of Amazon's bestsellers lists, including hitting number 1 in the US for new releases in Asian politics, number 4 overall in the US for Asian politics, which was the same in the Australian market, and top 20 in Canada for international politics. Thank you guys so much. Also, don't forget that you still have a few days left to enter the draw for some awesome Reports on China merchandise, including my retro but at what cost enamel mug and the much sought after Wu Mao medal in silver. All you need to do is grab a copy before May 25, then go to reportsonchina.com and enter your details plus your Amazon order number. If you're a winner, I'll contact you by email on May 26. Okay, now on to the news. China has been forced to speak up about the dire state of the US economy after Moody's downgraded that country's credit rating amid fears that growing debt means it may not be able to pay back its own debts. That is the first time that Moody's have downgraded the US credit rating since 1917, more than 100 years ago. The BBC reported, "A lower credit rating means countries are more likely to default on their sovereign debt and generally face higher borrowing costs." Of course, Trump's regime has hit back, blaming everyone but the current administration. In a statement, the White House said it was focused on fixing Biden's mess while taking a swipe at Moody's. They quote the White House as saying, "If Moody's had any credibility, they would not have stayed silent as the fiscal disaster of the past 4 years unfolded." But as with most of the Trump regime's rambling attempts to paint any negative outcome as politically motivated, that claim about Moody's staying silent during the Biden administration is fake news. The BBC continues, "Moody's warned in 2023 the US AAA rating was at risk. Fitch Ratings downgraded the US in 2023 and S&P Global Ratings did so in 2011. America's current debt level is an astonishing $36.4 trillion. With a population of 341 million in the US, that works out at $106,745 per person. Per person. Absolutely terrifying, especially considering all the US will do is keep printing money to cover it. The reckless spending and hideous management of the US economy has forced China, who usually stays quiet about the domestic affairs of other countries, to ask the US to get their act into gear and sort out their financial mess. Foreign Affairs spokesperson Mao Ning made a brief and pointed statement. The US should take responsible policy measures to keep the international financial and economic system stable and protect investors' interests. And China is very much entitled to comment since the US financial system affects the entire world, and also because China literally bailed the US and the world out during the 2008 financial crisis, pulling the world back from the brink of economic collapse. Back in 2008, reckless actions from the money-hungry bankers on Wall Street, coupled with lax oversight from the government, Allowing such criminal practices and scams to go on unchecked triggered the collapse of the US housing bubble. But China came to the rescue, buying large amounts of US debt, at that stage over US $2 trillion worth, which gave Washington, D.C. the funds it needed to pass its $700 billion troubled asset relief program to bail out banks and stabilize markets. Just a quick reminder though, in China, corrupt bankers are heavily punished by the law, and under the same circumstances would have very likely been given the death penalty here in China. In the US, those risk-taking, scamming bankers are celebrated and bailed out. On top of that, China passed a massive domestic stimulus package worth $586 billion, which helped keep up global demand and reduce the impact of the financial crisis. Thank you, China. And it's not just China speaking up. The International Monetary Fund is also urging the US to do more to curb its massive debt. This from the Financial Times. A top IMF official has called on the US to reduce its fiscal deficit and tackle its ever-increasing debt burden at a time of rising concerns about President Donald Trump's plans for sweeping tax cuts. The US fiscal deficits are too large and they need to be brought down, Geeta Gopinath, the IMF's first deputy managing director, told the Financial Times. Geeta goes as far as to blame Trump's Liberation Day tariff scam as part of the problem, the Financial Times continues. She also warned that the world's biggest economy was still affected by very elevated trade policy uncertainty, despite positive developments such as the Trump administration dialing back tariffs on China. The tariff pause with China is a positive development, said Gopinath, who also welcomed the US-UK agreement. But she stressed that the US effective tariff rate remained far higher than it was last year, and that high levies on China had only been paused. Will the Trump regime take notice? Well, probably not, because for them, any negative feedback or negative reaction to their policies and practices are just painted as politically motivated and effectively ignored. Will China be willing to bail the US out again? Well, I would say probably not. And on that note, that will be it for today, guys. But as always, I'd love to hear your thoughts, so do let me know down below. Is the US pulling us all towards another financial crisis? And do you think China would be willing to help this time around? Also, don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you haven't already. It really does help the channel. I'll see you all next time. Bye-bye.